BT7 format is coming to a close, but before we move on to the new upcoming BT8 decks, there is of course one more major tournament coming up that is of course the Ultimate Cups here at the end of April. And if you are lucky enough to have gotten a ticket to the Ultimate Cup, then I'm going to go over what my top picks are for the Ultimate Cup tournaments and what I think are going to be the top decks at the top tables for this event. Coming in as my top pick for the Ultimate Cup is, of course, then this should come as no surprise to anyone who's been following the BT7 competitive scene, is Blue Hybrid. Ever since Blue Hybrid took over as the de facto best deck in the format, everyone has had Tommy and friends on their radar and are in the lab cooking up their own answer to the deck. However, what's interesting about Blue Hybrid as opposed to other one deck formats that we have had is that the mirror match doesn't necessarily devolve into this weird coin flip. Instead, there is actually a lot of room for skill expression in the Blue Hybrid mirror with appropriate use and timing of floodgates like Madoki Betamon and Siyakomon, tech choices like Aqua Viper or Mimi, which can really turn the mirror in your advantage, and of course, just smart commitment of your resources in general. Not to mention that this deck's poor matchups are really 50-50 at worst, making Blue Hybrid the deck of choice for players who are really confident in their skill and their piloting ability. And I think that this means that the Blue Hybrid deck is still going to be the majority of the field at Ultimate Cup, so you should definitely be prepared to run into this deck and make sure that you are ready to take this on, whether in the mirror match or by picking a deck that has a fair shot into beating it. Coming in at number 2 as my second strongest deck at Ultimate Cup is going to be Lilith Loop / Eyes Cerberusmon Rush. Now, these are essentially kind of the same deck as they pretty much run the same body and are centered around the same combo idea. They just run a slightly different top end at the level 6 rank of the deck. However, in general, the Lilith Loop idea is no stranger to the meta. This is a deck style that was notable for being one of the only non-Blue Hybrid decks to crack the top 4 at a Digifest event from earlier this month. So I think that alone was enough to raise some eyebrows, and surely people have been practicing the deck and refining their build since then. The powerful Rush engine this deck has access to turns the old combo reliant Lilith deck into a deck that has a lot more potency in the mid game, securing wins without ever having to drop an Omnimon Zwart onto the field. With a good hand or a scatter mode that rolls jamming, this deck can come out swinging aggressively and put any deck with a slower start on a timer. Of course, the inverse is true as well. The deck's perennial weakness is getting rushed down against aggressive early game decks. So if you take purple to the event and you can dodge matchups such as red hybrid or red-green hybrid, you'll find a lot of success with this deck. As for the blue matchup, some will say that this deck has a hard time taking on blue thanks to the stuns and bounces coming out from the deck, but I think a smart purple player has a lot of play to get around those stuns and bounces. For example, a stunned scatter mode on the field can be turned into a Cerberusmon, and then from there can be popped by Cerberusmon Werewolf mode to essentially even out the memory and then still be able to rush and attack the enemy. Also, you have to consider Deathclaw as a card that can take a stunned Digimon and then turn it into a removal that you maybe were not expecting. So definitely you have to be careful of those cards if you are the Blue Hybrid player. But in general, I think Beowulf's Bounce can be the trickiest card to play around if you're the purple player, but if you can Digivolve to level 5, you're generally safe unless the opponent is running Magna Garurumon, which I don't think is going to be the most popular variant of Blue Hybrid. I think we're still going to be seeing the more Tommy-focused with Azulangmon as the finisher, as the main build. However, I still think that purple has a very fair shot into the deck and is definitely the second strongest deck at the event, and my pick for another top 2 deck that will be at Ultimate Cup. Next up is a deck that has been getting a lot of hype in online circles, but has taken some time to see popular play, and I am of course talking about Cherubimom. I specifically want to talk about the yellow based Cherubimom, as I do think that that is the version of the deck that will have the most success into the Ultimate Cup meta. Cherubi didn't get much attention coming into the English BT7 meta as it was largely absent from Japanese tournaments. I think there are a couple reasons for this. Maybe it was getting gatekept by the Mega Digimon Fusion decks, or Ice Wall. So now that those are pretty much a non-issue, we're starting to see a lot more innovative strategies like this yellow-based Cherubimom come to light. The purple hybrid engine present in the deck has some nice inbuilt recursion and removal thanks to cards like Rihimon, Calling from Darkness, Kaiser Leomon, and Deathclaw respectively. Cherubi itself fits into the theme of the deck very well, as it brings back a trash tamer and wipes level 4 or lowers off your opponent's board depending on how many tamers you have. And then once it's destroyed on deletion, it can play as many level 3s as you have tamers onto the board. So that serves as your win button by getting out a bunch of Bushi Agumons and then having them rush for game. It's also notable that this deck is capable of comfortably main decking Mimi and Kari, which both can significantly slow down the blue hybrid strategy or pretty much any other deck in the meta. These cards also provide the yellow Cherubi player deck some nice inbuilt synergy. Ever seen a Blinding Ray give +4 memory? Well, in this deck, it's certainly possible. And if you're an anti-meta hero, Cherubi is definitely your best bet and my personal pick for third best deck at Ultimate Cup. My next pick is a deck that was hyped as the heir to the best deck throne coming into the format, but soon pretty much fell off a cliff, posting less than stellar results at Digifest and overall falling very short of expectations. I am, of course, talking about Yellow Hybrid. Out of all the Mega Digimon Fusion decks that were hit by the ban list, Yellow Hybrid has struggled the most to find its footing, with the Susanomon win button pretty much being removed from the deck and the reinforced memory boost limit cutting the deck's resiliency and consistency out from under it. Yellow Hybrid finds itself in a very precarious situation. Although it still has game into Blue Hybrid, often touted as Yellow's best matchup, I think the Azulongmon innovation from the Blue Hybrid players has pretty much turned the tides back into Blue Hybrid's favor, and it turns it more into a 50-50 matchup instead of being heavily Yellow favored. This leaves Yellow struggling to collect wins against a matchup that it's supposed to be winning against consistently throughout the tournament. Furthermore, Yellow Hybrid Mirror is extremely aggravating for even the most seasoned control player, and I think that's actually the deck's biggest weakness in a tournament setting, where oftentimes you're losing to the clock more than the opposing player. And I think this means that in a Swiss event, a lot of these Yellow Hybrid players will either start losing to time or drawing into each other, therefore reducing their Swiss standings. And I think that's why we fail to see a lot of Yellow Hybrid decks at the top. So if you are choosing to play this deck, I think you have to be very careful. You have to be very confident in your plays, and you have to avoid slow playing at any cost in order to be able to effectively win against the clock, which I think is going to be probably your biggest enemy at this event. You should also consider running more aggressive card choices, such as BT1 Seraphimon, BT4 War Greymon, or BT7 Kazuchimon, as they all allow you to check multiple times and therefore actually win the game by clearing out your opponent's security instead of just healing and stalling out. So I think if you're brave enough to take this deck, now might be the time, as I think a majority of the old Yellow Hybrid players have pretty much left for bluer pastures, seeing as how that's pretty much the deck that is considered the best now. And I think Yellow Hybrid is a deck that attracts players who want to play the best deck. So maybe if you are brave enough to run the deck now, you might run into less mirrors as people have dropped off. And I think that could be a pretty big boon for the deck, and consider it my fourth pick for top deck at Ultimate Cup. Now, my last top pick for Ultimate Cup isn't just one deck, but a general playstyle that I think has potential to take a player all the way to the top, and I'm calling this playstyle High Roll Aggro. In this group, I'm including decks like Red Hybrid, Red-Green Hybrid, Discard Aggro, Darugomon OTK, and of course, Jesmon. What these decks all have in common is the ability to outright beat down the opponent without giving them much of a chance at retaliation. Red Hybrid variants have access to Atomic Inferno and other ways to burn through the opponent's security very quickly with cards such as Ancient Greymon and Ancient Beetlemon. Discard Aggro is an Eismon deck that trades the ceiling of Lilith Loop for higher rookie counts and cards like EX1 Ogremon. Darugomon can clear board and threaten multiple checks with a big stack, while simultaneously having access to one of the only powerful blockers in the game in the form of putting Final Zubugon Punch on Darugomon itself. And of course, Jessamon is a deck that needs no explanation. If they draw their cards, they win. If they don't draw their cards, it's just a race to see if they can stabilize until they do before the opponent wins. So I think that in general, the reason why I list these decks as high roll is because they do require a healthy dose of luck in order to go on a deep run in a tournament. Not only do you need to be drawing well throughout the entire event, but you also have to hope that the opponent's security is also relatively weak, because an ill-timed Tommy or Schwartz lurking in security can spell doom for pretty much any aggro player. Even just hitting multiple tamers in a multi-security check swing can put enough gas in your opponent's tank in order to let them overwhelm you on their following turn. So if you're feeling lucky and you want to take one of these high roll aggro decks to the event, I think that's a perfectly valid choice. And I think that if you have enough dose of luck on your side, you are going to be able to make a deep run at the tournament. Is it going to be enough to get you the top prize? I don't necessarily think so. I think you're gonna have to be extremely lucky. You might as well go buy a lotto ticket or head to Vegas at that point. But I think the decks can get you to at least the top 32, top 16, no problem, especially if the day is on your side. So there you have it, guys. These are my top decks for the Ultimate Cup tournament. If you guys weren't really sure what to play, or you were just looking for something else besides Blue Hybrid to play, well then I hope you guys have learned something from this video. And if you did, please hit the subscribe button and also follow me on Twitter at DigitamerJoel. That's where I'm going to be trying to grow my social media presence, posting every day, posting some interesting deck lists, tech choices, talking with you guys. Feel free to shoot me a DM, ask any questions, shoot the shit. That's where I'm going to be at. So I will see you guys in the next video, and GG's.